Like every other well-adjusted person on Earth, the rumor and then leak and then announcement of a new Astrobot game caused me to drop to my knees on the spot and scream for joy. Which, yes, would have been 3 different times, and that's probably why I'm no longer allowed at Costco. But damn it, it's fine, because Astro is all I have. Any PlayStation 5 owner worth their salt knows that this little robot is the face of the coolest pack-in game since at least Wii Sports, and for some reason that demo is still the best showcase of all the DualSense controller's features. What you may not know though is that Astro actually goes back to the launch of the PS4. Not just the VR, but the Playroom, and not Astro's Playroom, that's the PS5 demo. The Playroom was a weird little pack-in demo designed for the PlayStation 4 camera, because every console needed a camera gimmick in 2013. That's right, this little guy's not just a couple years old, he's old enough to get medical advice via Twitch DMs. Or at least, I guess. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. The last remnants of PlayStation's Japan studio ended up building off of these little tech demos, bouncing from the PS4 camera to the Playroom VR in late 2016. This pack-in featured an even greater focus on the cute little robot design, in a number of asymmetrical minigames that would pit the headset wearer against their friends on the couch, who would see a different perspective on the TV screen. Not too dissimilar to what Nintendo pretended people would actually do with the Wii U, except in the PSVR's case, it was at least a device that people might want to show to their loved ones. Trust me, I tried showing my parents Nintendo Land, and they spanked me. I was 20. But the star of the Playroom VR was a short, one-level prelude to Astro's real breakout, a little platformer sampler that tasked you with helping Astro rescue his missing friends. This tester would expand in 2018 to Astrobot Rescue Mission, Astro's full game debut, a masterpiece of whimsical, just pure fun platformer design that is criminally locked to a last-gen VR headset that even if you find one for $50 on clearance at your local Costco and they still let you in, you can't even easily plug into your PS5 as it's not natively compatible. Astro's first real game is, conservatively put, maybe the only good video game ever made. I've felt this way ever since I first played it years ago, only once considering that it was maybe the hot dogs talking, seeing as how I only tend to play this game while packed disgustingly full of $1.50 glizzies. Seriously, you want to see a Rescue Mission? Back when I first played it, one of my early takeaways of Rescue Mission was much like you've heard about the new PS5 game if you followed previews, that this was the closest a PlayStation game has ever come to Mario. In Rescue Mission's case, I had the same sort of feeling that I can only assume would be the case if Mario Galaxy was built from the ground up as a VR game, and as a stupid platformer nerd, I don't say that lightly. But like everybody who's ever had a VR headset, I only played a couple hours before I switched to another cool new thing and never circled back. Even when I finished the PS5 pack-in on launch day, I wasn't gonna go back and excitedly hook up my old system end of VR headset instead of, play any of the PS5's other game. It was Astro's new sequel being announced that finally got me to go back, hook myself and my PS4 up to a million wires, and play Rescue Mission in full. Frankly, I was stupid to have ever put it back down back in the day to try and cop a feel in Final Fantasy XV fishing. Rescue Mission only got better as it progressed, with novel ways to incorporate the VR gimmick organically into each new level across Rescue Mission's 5 worlds, capturing that same sort of what are they gonna think of next hardware mastery that really only Nintendo has traditionally achieved. And make no mistake, even though Rescue Mission is, even 6 years later, one of the 3 or 4 highest rated VR games ever made, it earns my praise because unlike so many VR games, the fun transcends the gimmick. This isn't just a good VR game, it's an excellent video game that happens to use a VR headset for the camera and happens to be stuck behind this headset so that only a fraction of interested players could even justify buying in. Hence why I'm here to talk about it. Before my review of the new Astro game later this week, and while you're all sitting here watching this while I'm playing my review copy of that game, I want to dig through Rescue Mission for the folks out there that enjoyed Astro's Playroom, or are excited for his new title, or simply want to learn a bit more about a platformer that's such pure joy that I would genuinely put it up there with some of the 3D Mario games. Again, I don't say that lightly, this game was just that fun. This is Astrobot's first breakout hit. So I could start by saying that Rescue Mission is a linear 3D platformer with nearly 30 levels spread across 5 worlds, each of which contain 8 hidden bots for you to rescue along the way. And in fact, I did just start with that. How does that feel? But it's more important to set the table for what makes Rescue Mission feel so special. To do that, I'm going to ask you platformer fans to throw away your years or decades of muscle memory and put yourself in the mindset of where you were when you first jumped from 2D to 3D for the very first time. Because although not as drastic, that's kind of what Rescue Mission has to do from a design standpoint. See, there are a couple clear pillars of design philosophy that became the focus of this game, and naturally just about all of these come from the limitations or perhaps strengths of designing for VR. On one end, you have the player being a physical part of the experience, because in this game, your headset isn't just the camera, you are also a larger robot helping Astro on his journey. This means you can see yourself in reflections or TV monitors. It gives purpose to those VR immersion moments like when you get splashed by water. It can tie you directly into hazards by having enemies that kick soccer balls at your head and dare you to headbutt them back, and it makes it all the more adorable when Astro's standing still and he just looks up to say hi. If any of you ever hurt him, I will end you. On the other end, games on the PSVR are mostly powered by the illusion of good graphics, since the headset and PS4 weren't exactly powerhouses for the medium. A bad texture in a flat screen game is just kind of a, look at that moment, or a novelty account pointing out bad fruit models. In VR, it can completely break verisimilitude, which is, fun fact, what VR actually stands for. Don't Google that. Anything that disconnects you from the experience harms a VR game potentially irreparably, and when displayed on a flat screen like, say, a video retrospective, it looks far worse than when you're hooked in and your eyes are filling in all the gaps. Quick sidebar, it doesn't help that what's displayed on a TV when you're playing, or the footage you're seeing here that I captured, is at an aspect ratio that ends up cutting out some of the vertical space, so just forgive the times that Astro, the controller, or a gadget is half cut off on the bottom of the screen, because if you were playing, that would all be in full view the whole time. This potential for immersion breaking meant that the game had to constantly toy with variety, so that you don't get too used to a visual motif long enough to notice any cracks. Additionally, VR tends to have a funny habit of making you feel like an old person who looks down at their controller to see where their buttons are and where their fingers are, because no matter how immersed you get into the game, you are still anchored to reality by way of a bunch of wires and a console that you really don't want to yank to the floor. That's where Astrobot's trademark on-screen controller comes into play, and it's probably what's built this little dude up to being inextricably linked to PlayStation fan service, tech showcases, and nostalgia ever since. Not only does it serve to be there at any moment when you need to look down to see what button you're pressing, even showing those presses or stick movements on the virtual controller, it's also there to calibrate you at the start of each and every level for the game's gyro gimmicks. More on those in a bit. Okay, so there's your VR set dressing. Now the problem comes much like it did back in the 90s when games started having controllable cameras. How do you design your mascot to move relative to that camera? And how do you showcase depth to make sure your players aren't misjudging a jump's distance? You can see why I asked you to put yourself in that pre-3D mindset. Just like your parents who maybe struggled to keep up when games got more and more complex, and just like many kids today can struggle with 2D games if they were only exposed to 3D ones from the start, there's a lot to unlearn when you're trying to untether players from one reality to immerse in virtual reality. As stupid as I know that sounds when set in a vacuum, you have to design your gameplay core pretty simply to avoid even veteran gamers losing track of something as simple as which buttons they're pressing. Or at least you have to prepare for that possibility. And so, Astro only has a couple moves. He's got a jump, of course it is a platformer. He's got a punch that you can charge for a spin attack. With the same square button as the punch, he can also grab some items to throw. And in lieu of a double jump, Astro has a hover that fires lasers directly below him from his feet. This is, of course, multi-purpose. It's good for another attack, for ensuring that you've got a bit of a safety net when jumping, and so that at every single moment you can tell exactly whether you're above ground or not when crossing gaps. But it being an attack also poses an opportunity for unique challenges that games with a regular double jump don't necessarily have, like having floors that you could accidentally destroy if you do rely on that hover. Since the essence of many a platforming challenge throughout history is more in taking away your comfort blanket rather than just tossing more and more hazards out and telling you to go nuts, this works really well. There aren't really many fancy movement techs or strategies. These few moves are what we're working with. It is an incredibly simple game, simpler than even the Mario games to which it's usually compared. It's the level design, the never-ending variety of gimmicks or twists, and the pure whimsy that comes with playing a simple but joyous platformer that continually makes you smile. It's these things that take Astro beyond its necessary simplicity and into something worthy of those constant Mario comparisons that any half-decent platformer always gets. I remember when I first picked up a PSVR on sale for more than half off, because like hell I was going to pay full price for a gimmick, and I remember when I loaded this first level up, because I remember immediately thinking, this is what a lot of people felt when they first played Mario Galaxy. That is to say, it wasn't anything revolutionary that would change the very essence of games forever like a Mario 64 did, but instead, for those people whose jaws dropped at spherical platforming in Mario Galaxy, it changed their perceptions of what was possible in a platformer going forward. Now, I had already seen some of that spherical platforming in Ratchet & Clank, so suck it, nerds, but that same whoa moment, I got to have it here, and for some stupid reason, it made me look back at Galaxy even more fondly than I already did, because I finally got, by way of this game, why that game clicked so much more for some people beyond being just a really good game. So, most of my notes that I took while recording ended up pretty sparse, mainly because of the whole needing to take the headset off to type thing. Well, a lot of it ended up being, man, this gimmick is fun as fuck, or man, that level was fun as fuck, because every level is its own little spectacle, and it's all admittedly fun as fuck. Whether it's the novelty of the tutorials, very simple early platforming seen from a bunch of unique perspectives with that, VR 3D moment of Astro walking towards you, it's really cool. Or those video game trailer moments when you look up and see the scale of a beanstalk or a giant robot buddy rising above you knowing that you have to climb them and conquer them. Or the possible jump scare of having a whale swallow you and Astro whole, turning that entire level into a surprise anatomy lesson. Just about every stage tries to tell a little micro story that's enhanced by you being a physical part of that world. The developers at Team Asobi have talked about how Rescue Mission had to be designed on two planes simultaneously. There's the plane below you, where you're watching Astro engage in all of these platforming challenges, and then also the plane above and around you, where you can look out and be wowed by some visual in the distance that encourages you to constantly keep looking around and encourages an explorative mindset. That's of course where Astro's missing friends come into play, since as many of them are hidden behind a little secret area or puzzle to be solved, as there are ones that are just standing on a ledge, waiting for you to kick them in the butt and send them flying into your controller. Your controller, by the way, is where these robots live. And fuck, that's what the DualSense's HD Rumble is. It's these robots just going at it. It's rarely super difficult to find a missing bot since they're all marked in order, and the game doesn't just encourage you as the camera to never stop looking around, it encourages you to look at something and say, wait, I can get to that, can't I? There's almost never an accessible area that isn't littered with coins to collect as a reward for your curiosity, and these coins actually do serve a purpose. You use them in another Astrobot series staple, a cute little gacha machine that unlocks figurines of different enemies or set pieces from each of the game's biomes. Moreover, every bot you collect will appear in your PSVR-shaped spaceship and follow you around like Pikmin as you explore each of the cute little dioramas of those biomes, getting to see and interact with all of the stuff you've been unlocking. When revisiting levels, any of the bots you collect will be replaced with a big silver coin, both to remind you which bots you've rescued in order where they were, and just to give you a bunch of extra coins. You don't even have to finish replaying a level once you've gotten all the collectibles. You can just exit from the pause menu and it auto-saves so as to not waste your time. Although, at the end of every stage, you do get to see all of the bots you've rescued and Astro himself doing some cute little dances, which is not to be missed, and there's a touchpad slingshot minigame that, if you aim it and time correctly, will give you the chance to earn a bunch of bonus coins. The timing of it changes just about every stage as well, so you've got to stay on your toes. It's a fun little attention to detail in a game full of attention to detail. Anyway, all of this is to say that the levels themselves can go by super quickly if you're just speeding through. This was only a $40 game at launch after all. But like any good bakery, Astro strives on its breadth rather than depth, and if you're taking the time to let the game cook, there's always a stellar eureka moment somewhere in each and every stage, usually multiple times. Just when you think you've got their formula down pat, boom, there's a stage that physically pulls the exit away from you, or a moment when the forced perspective really just takes you aback because you're seeing a classic minecart level from angles that no flat-screen game can truly replicate, or there's an implementation of one of the game's many stage-specific gyro gadgets that makes you go, I didn't even think to do that. It's enough to even take a generic-looking alien final boss from, well, generic to giggle-inducing madness because he's got a DualShock too. It's ribbed for his pleasure, weirdly enough, and he'll use all of those very same gadgets you've used throughout the game right back at you. Let's talk about some of those gyro gadgets, the biggest source of Astro's perennially progressing variety, and by way of the emphasis on motion controls, the single thing that took Astro from just pure fun to just pure fun, parentheses Nintendo. Because, let's be honest, Nintendo's brand of fun is a whole level entirely its own. like driving a Ferrari, sobbing into a Whopper, or crashing a Boeing. You could do it elsewhere, but some brands just do it better. Throughout the game, certain levels will toss a specific gizmo your way, catered for that level in particular. One of the earliest of these is a platforming staple, the hookshot, but since these gadgets affect your controller and not Astro, it means it's not a grappling hook for him to swing across gaps. Instead, you're firing off tight ropes to help him walk across those gaps, or so you can yank objects out of the way. Simple enough, but like everything here, it's all in the execution. However you hold or aim your controller naturally affects the rope, even when Astro's walking across it. Shake it, and you can launch Astro up for a super jump. A couple of these power-ups even reference Astro's earlier history, such as the shuriken used back in 2013 for this auto-runner minigame. Here in Rescue Mission, you'll swipe the touchpad up to fire off shuriken that tilt to match the position of your controller. Not only does it make for some cool reactive moments where the bamboo that litters this dojo level will be cut down to size at any angle you desire, important for making some platforms to find secrets even, your aiming angle can also matter for cutting the spider boss's web, and coolest of all, making some ninja star platforms that Astro needs to climb up and jump across. Considering that by this point in the PS4's lifespan, the touchpad was used almost exclusively as a map button, I'll take innovative little uses like this any day. Honestly, my biggest critique of Rescue Mission is that in the search for constant variety, and given the game's smaller size and runtime compared to a full-price retail game, it never gets to fully explore the possibilities of each gadget or gimmick. Some of these might only be used for 2 or 3 levels. In fact, the flashlight is maybe the one that gave me the biggest feeling of, whoa, this is so cool, where aiming your controller around the stage reveals invisible platforms and walls, and that's only used once in the main stages. With only a couple dozen stages in the game, a quarter of which are the world bosses, it makes sense. Too much repetition of the gyro gadgets could overwhelm the game, and actively would take away from the team's ability to create innovative levels that don't require a gadget at all. But still, I was always waiting for the game to really put it all together. And that's where the other collectible comes into play, one I didn't mention yet. Hidden in every main stage is a single chameleon latched onto a wall or ceiling, cloaked and invisible until you're looking right at it. Again, a way to encourage you to keep looking around and observing every corner or chasm so that you're never stuck on one visual for too long, such that the illusion can fade. Finding these chameleons unlocks a corresponding bonus mission in the game's Challenge Asteroid Belt. And this is the kind of stuff that if you're a platforming diehard like me, you are going to adore, and maybe hate when you die a few too many times, but still adore. Equal parts asset reuse, gyro gadget gimmick, reuse, and speedrun challenge, these are some of the most fun parts of the game from a pure platforming standpoint. One of my favorites, even as I was cursing under my breath, is a haunted house level that requires you to perfectly coordinate yourself in a way that you would never be used to in your time as a regular platformer player. Not only do you have to keep your head focused equally on Astro in your foreground, while turning to look ahead towards the rest of the level, your controller here is a flashlight that reveals both invisible platforms and invisible hazards along the way. So now you have to hold your hand steady in a different direction than you may be looking while Astro's leaping from platform to platform, and you're trying to keep one eye on him to make sure you don't over or undershoot a jump, while keeping another eye on what's coming up. There's a similar gadget in earlier levels that turns your controller into a fire hose or water gun. Sometimes it's used to water plants, other times it's used to cool off a fiery boulder that the octopus boss shoots out at you, but in a couple levels, and in particular in one speedrun challenge, the water creates a temporary walking surface on top of deadly lava. So again, with your head on a swivel, you're trying to water together a path with your gyro for Astro to survive, while knowing that water isn't always going to land in the same spots even with a steady stream and steady hands, meaning that you've got to watch for gaps that Astro might slip into as you're moving with the stick while still trying to look ahead. Once again, it brings about the best, most novel, and most Nintendo-esque use of motion controls that I can recall from a non-first-party Nintendo game, while willingly stacking another layer onto the usual hand-eye coordination, the sort of thing that can only be pulled off with a VR headset replacing the right analog stick as your camera. Plus, you can shoot the water gun at your own face and get a trophy. God of War has just been holding that Game of the Year award in 2018 for Astro this entire time. Now, not all of these challenges are as noteworthy for simply using the gadgets in a novel or more challenging way. Many are pure platforming sections that serve as time trials, and some are as simple as VR shooting galleries using the water or Gatling gun powers, with Astro saving extra bots if he gets the gold medal score or time. Even for all of the 60 to 90 seconds a lot of these last, although in some cases they take you like 20 minutes to finish, I genuinely can't say I've experienced challenges as all-encompassing as some of what this game provides. It's an itch that few, if any, other games have really quite scratched, and since VR is destined to be more niche than traditional gaming, it's the kind of thing that I don't know will ever get to be fully replicated. That's really the key when it comes to Rescue Mission. Honestly, I would probably say that Astro's Playroom, the free PS5 pack-in, is a better game overall thanks to what the team learned along the way here, leading to improved level design. But that added VR element makes this a one-of-a-kind experience, at least until somebody else wants to waste the money making it as fun a VR collectathon. I would say with how many VR studios are currently being downsized or killed off entirely, that's pretty unlikely. It's just not worth the time for the limited sales potential. There's, simply put, a reason why Rescue Mission was, admittedly a little hyperbolically called by the press at the time, VR's Mario 64 moment, the easy way for talking heads to explain in a headline that this game commands your attention. I prefer calling it the only good video game, but hey, some of us have restraint. There's a reason why I even went as far to think a bit deeper about it and instead evoke Mario Galaxy rather than 64. Those are easy comparisons to make on the surface, and like any Mario killer or Halo killer or genre leader killer, everybody's eyes glaze over when we hear that sort of stuff. But I truly do think the Galaxy comparison is apt here because of the joy and wonder that Astrobot was able to evoke here. Like in the early days of the Wii when Galaxy had first hit the market, VR by late 2018 was still filled with half-baked motion gimmicks, calibration issues, or bona fide tech demos charging a premium simply because, what else are you gonna buy? In a way, it was just a more experimental version of a lot of the Wii's shovelware, with similar quality in a lot of cases. In Astro's case, in a world at the time full of mostly first-person experiences that had to use those little teleport hops to avoid most people getting motion sick, this was one of the first games that earned its full-ish game price tag, not just because there weren't really many other options, but because it was that creative, that polished, that joyous, an experience that changed what you saw as possible with this VR medium going forward. And the kicker is that it was one you could much more easily show to friends and family because a good platformer is a universal experience. And that's why I wanted to highlight this game before Astro's next big break, because too many people will simply never get the chance to try out this origin story of sorts. Even if I can just for a moment take you behind the headset and explain what it felt like, even if from your phone, TV, or monitor, it's not going to look quite like it did for those of us lucky to have played it and had our eyes fill in the gaps to create an even greater wonder. If I can for a moment expose you to this level of, again, pure fun, mission accomplished.